Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. It is my distinct honor to introduce this episode's guest.
As a commander, you feel those same pains, but when you get up there on stage and in front of everybody, you got to be that strong person to relay that strong message and really not show the emotion that's really kind of going inside.
What was it like as a commander when you had a death like that?
It scared the hell out of me to get up in front of everybody and try to tell them everything's going to be all right. But you just go up there and you try to hold the team together. I think the demographics with the younger kids now, there's so much on social media. They see it all over the news and everything else. So I think that maybe at times plants a bad seed in their mind too. They're like, oh, these other people do it, so maybe this is an out for me too.
So you get to speak directly with some of these folks.
Well, yeah, but you don't know what the folks are, right? It's just sometimes you just start talking to people, and the next thing it leads to another thing. Then they start talking about it, and I don't know if I've stopped it, but I know at least I've given them a chance to tell their story and get some stuff off their chest. Hey, Ken, this is I'm Dana Hessheimer. Spent 31 years in the Air Force, a variety of things. I was a pilot. Now I'm retired, did the slimy contractor thing for a while, and then decided to retire about a year ago. Then I got hooked up with Angel Force with Ann Dunsmore's group, angelforceusa.com there, and we're trying to tackle veteran suicide. At least bring it up to the front. I know we'll never be able to tackle it, but at least get the awareness out there and help anybody we can.
That's amazing. So I am interested. We've had several guests with this topic, and what's great is that it is now a discussion point where it used to be taboo, even shameful, etc. Now it's like a real thing, and I'm interested in what drew you to that, and what does it mean to be part of that mission?
Well, what kind of drew me to it is Ann approached me a couple years ago, and being a commander, I retired as a one-star general, so I had quite a few commands underneath my belt, and it seemed like every command I was underneath, especially a little bit more, flying drones towards the last part of my career, and it just stresses the kids out, and everything else. Then all of a sudden, I lived through probably at least one or two suicides under each command that I was, when I was commanding the people. So, and that's just something they don't treat or teach commanders, right? I grew up in small town Nebraska, and I never thought I'd be a commander, and then having to get up in front of 1,000 people and start talking about suicide and telling everybody it's going to be all right. So it was kind of like, now I'm retired. I'm just trying to give back as much as I can with my time to get this awareness out on veteran suicide.
So that's such an interesting point. Um, you weren't taught or trained about suicide, and I remember going through multiple schools as well. I didn't get as high level as you went, but yeah, we didn't really talk about it until it happened, and then it was sort of like a response versus like preparation. So I'm curious, like, are you trying to get that conversation in where like it's inevitable? And I will tell you, almost everywhere I've been, and I have to really think about it now, like there's been a suicide at almost everywhere I've been. And it's very confusing why we're not like trained on that.
Yeah, I mean, we had our training that they gave us in the Air Force, as you remember, and everybody just hated the training. They'd go there and it was 50 minutes out of their, it was in the guard or active duty or whatever. It's 15 minutes out of their day, and they'd whatever play on their phones and really not to pay attention to it. And it's like, okay, just ask somebody if they're all right. And then that was basically what the training was, right? There was nothing more or less to that. And especially at the commander level, there was absolutely nothing because they didn't really know how to, like I said, nobody ever talked about it. So there was no training whatsoever that they gave us on how to handle a suicide. So next thing you know, you're up in, like I said, up in front of 1,000 people when one of the, best friends in the wing knew about everybody, just to, died by suicide. And then it's like, okay, now I got to go up there and tell everybody it's going to be all right. Well, you know what? As a commander, you feel those same pains, but when you get up there on stage and in front of everybody, you got to be that strong person to relay that strong message and really not show the emotion that's really kind of going inside. So I think that's why we see a lot today, a lot of the commanders, those people are starting to die by suicide too, because I don't think, we're just all humans, at the, end of the day, we're just all humans trying to deal with this strong emotion that is just tough to deal with. And everybody deals with stress, obviously different.
Yeah. So what was it like as a commander when you had a death like that?
It scared the hell out of me to get up in front of everybody and try to tell them everything's going to be all right, because everybody's a little bit different, right? You can't hit everybody, but you just go up there and you try to hold the team together. You're the head coach at that time. You're just trying to hold the team together and obviously we gave them all sorts of avenues to talk about it and everything else. So just like, when, in the, as in the drone world or whatever, when, we're taking lives. I mean, that's what we do. That's what we signed up for, and you raised your hand and that's what you're doing. So even when I was commander, I thought it was kind of odd that we would let these kids go home after an event happened. So I actually got where my chaplains and director of psychological health, I actually got them clearances so they could actually talk to those individuals after every shot and event, so they would actually could talk to a so-called professional about it. I made them do it before they went home, especially at the end of a shift or anything, because you can't talk about it when you go home because you're not with like-minded people in the same security clearance. So that was just the whole drone unmanned thing is quite a whole different thing to how to manage death and everything else.
Yeah, I think when I was doing RPA, remotely piloted aircraft, right? What most people say drones, and
That's why I use drones anymore. Maybe
yeah,
when I was serving, but I'm like, whatever. I'm retired now, so I'm like, all right, if you want to call it a drone, call it a drone. I don't care.
yeah, that was like the first real like introduction to serious mental health issues, and I remember, I think we had a psychiatrist or psychologist, and they didn't have a clearance, and so it was like I was just like, why we
Yeah,
can't talk about like I
yeah,
don't feel good. We just dropped a bomb on a kid.
yeah,
And like in not being able to say that. So now I'm one of my best friends is a first sergeant, and I'm like, you are not getting anything unless you have a TS. Like you need to get into those spaces because that's where a lot of these problems occur, and that's where a lot of these people live. And I'm totally with you. I'm so glad you're the first person I've heard say that, like advocate for TS clearances for mental health professionals.
yeah. And as you've deployed, I've deployed with the manned aircraft, and when you're deployed, you're with all like-minded people, basically the same clearances and everything else. So let's say I don't care, you pick the airframe, F-16 bomber, whatever. After they go do their mission, which well then they go drop their bombs and they don't see the carnage that you leave as a RPA pilot does, because then an RPA pilot loiters around so the bad guys come pick up the dead guys and
Yeah.
take them off. So even after they land, they're still in a deployed location where they can actually talk to their brothers and and everything else, and they could just sit down and talk to it and have a beer after a mission or something. When in the RPA world, it's totally different where you can't do that at all. I mean, you could be on your way home to your kid's soccer game,
Yeah.
so
And get called back too,
yeah.
because like I remember calling folks back, oh my gosh, so many times because I was a line commander too.
Yep.
And like they're at movies with their family or they're in the middle of dinner. It's like, okay, we're up, we gotta go on an op. And it's like, oh my God, I have to go from like reading my kids' story books to like dropping cluster bombs on
Yeah.
100 people in the mountains. Like, oh my,
Yeah, it's just, and I don't think people get it. I see Hollywood tries to reenact it or whatever, but it's still just not the same.
no,
And
it's not.
nobody will get it unless you live it. You have to
Yeah.
live that space to understand that space.
Well, too, I think to your point, like you make a really good point where like I mean it is sometimes months leading up to like a strike. And so just
Yep.
like sitting there and waiting, doing the pattern of life, and then finally it's just like it's over in a second. It's like that's disruptive too. Like
Yep.
got to go on to something else, go on to someone else. And oh man, like that's
Yeah,
rough.
it's crazy, crazy mission. It's a great mission, but it's crazy. And it's really, like, we go back to suicide. I mean, man, that really that messes with people's minds. I mean, I always bring it up there, I kind of try to bring it up an example, just everyday life. It's like, okay, everybody handles stress different, right? Handles death different. It's like if you come up on an accident on the freeway and you see dead bodies, or possibly dead bodies right on the freeway, how many people are going to stop and how many people are going to drive by it? More people will drive by it than more people will stop. So that's just kind of a human nature how. So if you take that person that drove by it and then you throw them into that situation and then they have to do it, then that's a whole nother stress level on that individual that they don't want to deal with that stress. But once again, we signed up, raised our right hand to serve this country, which is, obviously the best country ever, but it's still stressful on people. So anyway, that's kind of some of the messages I try to give with Angel Force, and now we're teaming up with GMR and everything else for a big summit this September. Another good thing we're doing, Ann, is politically tied very good within the nation. So I think we're gonna have a Stop Suicidence Day in September. So that's on the docket that we're trying to make that a national day. So we're,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I know we're not going to stop it all, but man, if we can stop a few kids from trying to hurt themselves, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So I'm curious as far as the folks that you've seen, right? Like what's the demographic like that are the folks that you're helping save or at least addressing the issues? Like what do those folks sort of look and feel like?
I think it's obviously the younger kids, it's a whole different world than we grew up, or when I grew up. I think I'm a little older than you. So just a whole different world because I didn't have that social media tie to it and everything else. So when I was growing up, I really didn't even know what suicide was even about, right? Because I never saw it, never lived it, nor nothing like that. I think even if you never know, even if there was a death, maybe it was suicide and nobody ever talked about it or said it was that, because it was, like you said earlier, it's disgraceful. That's what people think it is, especially family members, it's like, oh my gosh, how did my whatever family member decide to take their own life, but it was just never talked about. So I think the demographics with the younger kids now, they're so much on social media, they see it all over the news and everything else. So I think that maybe at times plants a bad seed in their mind too. They're like, oh, these other people do it, so maybe this is an out for me too, as opposed to talking about it. And like I always say, the people that tell their story aren't the ones that hurt themselves. The people that tell their story are the ones that are looking for help. The ones that are quiet are the ones that die by suicide. And I had a great friend. We didn't even know he was even in trouble. And then next thing you know, he's, found in the back of his car on fire, and it turned out to be suicide. So I'm a big advocate for telling your story. So that's what I always go to. It's everybody thanks everybody for being a veteran, right? But then I think on the back end of that, because that's just like tongue in cheek anymore. Thank you for your service and everything else. But then I think you also, hey, how you doing? How's life or something? Just try to get a conversation with those individuals. And it's a little bit easier for me to do that. And I get that because I'm a retired general officer. So a lot of people like to talk to general officers now that I'm retired, not when I was serving, but you know what I'm saying? But then I think I can get a little more information out of them. And they're like, wow, a general officer actually cares what my feelings are.
So you get to speak directly with some of these folks.
Well, yeah, but you don't know what the folks are, right? It's just sometimes you just start talking to people, and the next thing it leads to another thing. Then they start talking about it, and I don't know if I've stopped it, but I know at least I've given them a chance to tell their story and get some stuff off their chest.
It's really fascinating and refreshing that there's a serious look to this. And if you go to angelforceusa.com, right?
Yep.
Website. there are serious influencers here that have backed this movement, right? I mean, you're getting a
Yep.
lot of
A
public.
lot of movie stars. Of course, it was, Anne's out of originated in Newport Beach. And that's where she started also. Once again, she's a big political influencer, also knows a lot of musicians and stuff like that. In fact, I don't even know if I should say it, but she goes to Rod Stewart's Christmas party every year. That's just the people she knows. So she's trying to take those influencers on the musical side also. And that's when, we talk about entertain part of it, engage, entertain, and educate. So that's our entertain part. Because if you get, and we've noticed that too, we've taken kids out to or the band out to Fort Belvoir, and it really opens up those younger kids, what I talked about, because that's the social. And then they can be with so-called rock stars and stuff like that. And it gets them just to open up, right? Put their guard down a little bit. And then once their guard comes down a little bit, and the end of music's a good therapeutical thing. And once they do that, then they open up a little bit more. Like I said, it's, yeah, I can't measure the numbers whatsoever. I've just known quite a few times kids after we engage with them and after, with the band and everything else, all they do is they come, some of them just come up and say thank you, and maybe that's all that they need to say, right? Because they had a chance to tell their story or get some of that stuff off their chest, or even get in a better mind space, right? Like life isn't so bad. There's entertainment out there that makes you laugh, makes you dance, make you sing and stuff like that. It's just another avenue that we're trying to utilize, with the contacts that Anne has and everything else to bring that to those kids also.
Yeah. So what are some of the resources that you have there in your force?
So we're really careful on our resources because the biggest resource we have is just talking to people. We're very cautious on what we do on telling people like go here or go do that. We'll say, hey, there's the 988 number, and we kind of leave it at that because then I think there's becomes a little bit of a liability factor for us. If we tell a kid, hey, this is the best place to go, well, maybe that's not the best place for that kid, and it puts them in a worse mindset than they already were. So we try to be cautious about that. So we're like, hey, here's some stuff, we'll talk about it, but we're not really directing any, them to any resources, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And that's an important distinction I want to make is you're a huge advocate, right? So we have like American Legion and we have these VSOs that exist to get other people to act, right? And I just got an email, I think a couple of days ago about legislation for dogs for service members, and it's like, yep, here they are again, got our back. And so what you're doing
I show you
is
my bracelets. I got my bracelets, my hero bracelets, so for the hero company. All their proceeds go to dogs for veterans. So
yeah,
yeah,
like I was just talking to my wife. Well, I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just talking about my wife about like the availability of service animals. They're just like, this needs to be a thing. And I think it's just suicide awareness and prevention, service animals, and all these therapies that are going on right now. We've had so many people on this podcast that are doing things so far ahead in advance that you see it first here, right? And it's really cool, and I love what you all are doing. I mean, we had Anne on our podcast, episode 50. Folks want to look that up, and it was just, I mean, she is unstoppable. I mean, it was
Yeah,
incredible, her energy.
I'm sure she talked about the equine, the horses, and the
Yep.
dogs. I mean, we'll bring those kind of people to our summit, so they can speak. And then if those kids want to go to them and talk to them, then that's kind of up to them. But that's kind of how we do it. We don't force anything on or tell them where to go. We just kind of bring people in for like summits and stuff like that. And then,
Yeah.
everybody's different, so then they get to pick and choose their own therapy they want to.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Action can be like an uphill battle, but advocacy can be downhill. I mean, you can really get a lot of momentum and getting a bunch of folks and a bunch of organizations involved. And And a lot of times just singing the tune is so hard, just get people moving, that inertia, especially with a topic like this.
And I'm glad you brought up the American Legion. I bring that up a lot too, and I really a huge proponent for the VFWs, the American Legion, and stuff like that, because those are places not only you get cheap drinks, but that's where you can talk to like-minded people, right? Because everybody has a story there or some sort of military story. Because if you go into those places, they're all about everybody wants to talk about their service and what they did, and that's what these kids need these days, which they don't really like to go to those places because it's just old people like me that sit in there and talk about war stories, right? But it is really enlightening if you go in there and those kids can really kind of get stuff off their chest. But a big plug for the VFW and American Legion.
Yeah. I mean, there's discussions with younger folks on, like, the purpose and placement, and these VSOs do exist for very powerful reasons. That's why they're funded. And it's good to see, like, the Gulf War generation and the OEF generation. Like, we are, there's a lot of things to say about our age group as far as, like, not being super motivated, but we're getting stuff done. Like, we're moving forward and we're getting things done because we have folks like you who are pushing us and giving us resources. So I think it's amazing what you're doing, and just take time out of your busy day and evening to be here with us is a true testament to the message, especially with, like, no benefit to you, like, except just your
You know
service.
what? It is a benefit to me. If, like I said, if I can save one kid, man, that's success, right? It's tough to measure, like I said, it's tough to measure success in this space too, but it's just saving one kid or, that's success to me.
Well, I think as a commander, you'd probably say yes to this, certainly, but I have had people come up to me years, even 10 years later, and like, hey, what you told me that day, like, I really needed it, you know?
Yeah. And then that's what's really, that's what makes you feel good
Yeah.
is when you do that. Not even if they save if you save a life or whatever, it's just like, you know what? When you were the commander, things were good, and thank you for all what you did for me and for us. Yeah, that's because you don't hear that when you're a commander because nobody wants to talk to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
just nature of the beast, right?
Yeah. And the best part is when you see, like, all the things that has happened after that. There might be kids, spouse, and career and volunteer work that they do, and you're like, oh man, thank God that maybe I said the right thing that day. And
Yep.
yeah. So I think it's a
It's
great
tough
message
to
for
measure,
people.
but yeah, yeah, it is. It's tough to measure, but like I said, I just not too long ago, guy called me up and was like, "Do you know what's really happening with the wing?" I'm like, "No." Once I left, I was kind of, but then he actually I flew back there and they showed me some of the stuff that I had started and how it's progressed and evolved, and that makes you feel pretty good.
Yeah, that's great, man. Good job, and great on you, and God bless you. And we love everything you're doing. And if there's anything we can do as an audience and as a staff, please let us know. To find more, injureforceusa.com. You can Google Injureforce. They have great search engine optimization. So certainly be able to find them. Resources as well. If people want to help out, they can contact you guys through there and your socials.
Yep.
So yeah, great interview, a concise and succinct one for this, and very powerful. And I really appreciate your time, Dana. Any last rounds?
No, it's my pleasure to be here. Just trying to get the message out to everybody out there, and it's not a bad thing to talk about suicide or talk about suicide.
Yeah, good,
It's a
because you never know
normal
who's
thing that,
there.
yeah, it's a normal thing that we just need to start living with every day and put seats belts in cars, right, to stop deaths. So we need to do something to stop suicides also.
That's a great analogy. I appreciate. I'm going to use that.
You can.
All right,
All
General.
right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah. Take
Talk
care.
to you soon. Yep. See ya.